When most people hear the name Ricky Nelson, they think of a clean-cut teen idol from the 1950s. A golden boy who made waves with his charm, voice, and Hollywood good looks. But behind the boyish smile and hit records was a sharp and surprisingly forward-thinking entertainer who built a financial legacy that would continue enriching his family long after his tragic death. Although he passed away in 1985, Ricky Nelson didn't just leave behind music and memories, he left behind a substantial fortune that would set his children up for life. What follows is the story of how one of America's first TV-bred pop stars went from household name to posthumous financial powerhouse, and how his family became filthy rich thanks to a fortune that still echoes decades later. From sitcom star to chart-topping icon, Ricky Nelson's rise to fame began on television. He starred alongside his real-life parents, Ozzie and Harriet, on the beloved sitcom The Adventures of Ozzie and Harriet. His character was essentially himself, a clean-cut, all-American boy. But Ricky wasn't just acting. He was building his audience. By the time he was a teenager, Ricky had already started recording music, and what started as a way to promote the family TV show turned into a full-blown pop music career. His early singles were smash hits, topping the charts and selling millions. Over the course of his career, he released dozens of hit songs, many of which became staples of early rock and roll. Each single, each album, and each television appearance brought money, not just one-time payments, but long-term royalties. At a time when the music industry was still maturing, Ricky understood the importance of owning his content, or at least retaining a slice of the profits from it. That kind of foresight helped him build a fortune that would last well beyond his lifetime. A portfolio bigger than music. Ricky Nelson wasn't just a singer and actor, he was also an astute businessman. Though he was never known as flashy or obsessed with wealth, he quietly diversified his income streams. Throughout his career, he invested in real estate, placing money in properties across California and other areas. He also had a keen interest in live performance venues where he could both perform and profit. During the peak of his career, Ricky was touring nationally, drawing large crowds and making impressive income from ticket sales, merchandise, and licensing deals. Even after his popularity declined slightly in the 1970s and early 80s, Ricky continued to earn through concerts, especially from nostalgic fans and rockabilly revivalists. His earnings remained steady, and while he wasn't always at the top of the charts, he remained financially secure. A tragic end, but not the end of the money. Ricky Nelson's life ended tragically in a plane crash on New Year's Eve in 1985. His death was sudden and shocking, cutting short a life that still had creative potential. At the time of his passing, some reports suggested that he had financial troubles, including debts and legal costs related to his divorce from Kristen Harmon, the mother of his 4 children. However, that's only part of the picture. While there may have been short-term financial strain at the time of his death, Ricky Nelson's long-term earnings from royalties, real estate, and licensing had already been set in motion. The empire he built didn't collapse when he died. Instead, it slowly continued to grow. Royalties, licensing, and the long tail of fame. One of the most powerful parts of Ricky Nelson's fortune came from music royalties. Every time one of his songs was played on the radio, streamed online, featured in a commercial, or added to a movie soundtrack, his estate earned money. Thanks to a deep catalog of hit songs and iconic performances, these royalties didn't dry up after his death, they actually increased over time. Moreover, his music has been licensed countless times, and the rights to his image and voice have also generated revenue. When his work is featured in documentaries, retrospectives, and television programs, those are all opportunities for the estate to earn money. In the decades since his death, Ricky Nelson's music has been rediscovered by new generations of fans. Streaming platforms, music festivals, and nostalgic programming have kept his name alive and kept the money flowing. The Nelson family, heirs to a hidden fortune. Ricky Nelson left behind 4 children: Tracy, the eldest daughter, twin sons Gunnar and Matthew, and youngest son Sam. All of them inherited some portion of his estate, and each has benefited from the wealth he accumulated and the brand he built. In particular, Gunnar and Matthew followed closely in their father's footsteps. They formed the band Nelson, achieving success in the early 90s with hits like Can't Live Without Your Love and Affection. Their career added to their own personal fortunes, but much of their initial momentum came from the legacy left by their father not just financially but in terms of public recognition, industry connections, and inherited musical talent. Tracy Nelson pursued a career in acting, appearing in television shows and films. She too benefited from the stable foundation Ricky provided. Youngest son Sam has mostly lived a quieter life but is said to have maintained a close relationship with his father's legacy in the management of the family's affairs, estate management. The unsung hero, one of the key reasons Ricky Nelson's family became so wealthy after his death was how well his estate was managed. Although there were debts to deal with, there was also a tremendous amount of value locked up in intellectual property, licensing rights, and investments. Rather than mismanage the estate, as happens in many celebrity cases, those in charge of Ricky's assets made smart decisions. They settled debts, reorganized assets, and began monetizing his legacy in a sustainable way. Over time, that work paid off. The estate grew in value, and with careful licensing deals, anniversary collections, and reissues of his music, Ricky's name remained not just relevant, but profitable. The power of nostalgia, another major factor in the enduring value of Ricky Nelson's fortune, is nostalgia. Fans who grew up watching him on television and listening to his records are now adults with spending power. They buy collector's items, vinyl reissues, concert tickets to tribute shows, and streaming subscriptions that include his music. Additionally, younger generations through platforms like YouTube and Spotify are discovering Ricky Nelson for the first time. His music still holds up and his story continues to fascinate audiences. Because of this ongoing interest, his family continues to see income that's both steady and significant. Even decades after his death, Ricky Nelson remains a bankable name in the entertainment industry. So just how rich did his family get? While exact numbers aren't public, the phrase filthy rich isn't an exaggeration. Through a combination of royalties, real estate, licensing deals, and smart estate management, Ricky Nelson's children were able to live lives of comfort and creativity. Each of his children has pursued personal careers, some more public than others, but all have benefited from the wealth and influence Ricky left behind. That wealth may have taken a few years to fully materialize after his death, but once the estate stabilized, it grew into a true financial powerhouse. It's likely that Ricky Nelson's family now controls an estate worth tens of millions of dollars. When you factor in his intellectual property rights, the royalties from his extensive music catalog, and his long-term cultural impact, the value of his legacy becomes crystal clear. Final thoughts. A legacy of love and long-term wealth. Ricky Nelson wasn't just a rock star, he was a pioneer. He blended family-friendly television with the rebellious spirit of early rock and roll. He wrote hit songs, acted in films, and built a brand that lasted well beyond his lifetime. But more than fame, he built a legacy, one that has made his family financially secure, creatively inspired, and forever tied to one of the most fascinating eras in American pop culture. Though his life was cut short, Ricky Nelson did what many celebrities fail to do. He turned his success into lasting wealth. His story is a powerful reminder that fame is fleeting, but a smart legacy can last for generations, and that's exactly what he left behind, a fortune so big it made his family filthy rich.